Most people think clematis is difficult to grow, but the truth is, most clematis plants die for one surprisingly simple reason, and once you know it, everything about growing them becomes dramatically easier. By the end of this video, you will know the 5 secrets that experienced gardeners use to keep clematis alive, blooming, and climbing year after year, even when life gets busy and the garden gets forgotten. The surprising part is that clematis has earned its difficult reputation almost entirely through misunderstanding. Gardeners buy the wrong variety for their conditions, they plant it at the wrong depth, they prune it at the wrong time, cut off every bud they had, and conclude that clematis simply does not work for them. It works. It just works differently than most plants, and the difference is what we are going to cover today. Let me know in the comments, have you successfully grown clematis before, or are you thinking about planting your first one this year? Because the answer you are about to discover may completely change what you try next. Secret number 1, choosing the right variety. This is where most clematis failures begin. Not at the planting stage, not at pruning time, right here at the nursery before the plant ever reaches the garden. There are hundreds of clematis varieties. They come in different sizes, different flowering seasons, different bloom styles, and different cultural requirements. And they are divided into 3 pruning groups, Group 1, Group 2, and Group 3, that determine how and when they are managed. Choosing a variety without understanding which group it belongs to is like buying a car without knowing whether it takes petrol or diesel. Everything looks fine until it stops working. Group 1 clematis varieties bloom in early spring, typically before most other garden plants are in flower. They produce blooms on old wood, growth that developed during the previous season. Varieties in this group include the evergreen Clematis armandi, Clematis alpina, and Clematis montana. These are vigorous, often large-growing plants that need very little intervention to thrive. For beginner gardeners, they are among the most forgiving options available. Group 2 varieties produce their showiest display in late spring and early July, also on old wood from the previous season. Many of the large flowered hybrids that gardeners most recognize, the dinner plate-sized blooms in purple, white, pink, and deep red, belong to this group. Varieties like Nellie Moser, the President, and Niobe are Group 2. They often produce a second, lighter flush of flowers on new growth later in the season. Group 3 varieties flower in late summer and autumn, entirely on new growth produced in the current season. Viticella types, the Texensis group, and many of the smaller flowered late bloomers fall here. Because all flowering happens on fresh growth, Group 3 plants can be pruned back very hard each year without any loss of flowering potential. The growing mistake that causes years of frustration is this. A gardener purchases a beautiful Group 2 variety, admires it through the growing season, and then cuts it back hard in late winter because it looks overgrown. Every bud for the entire upcoming spring display has just been removed. The plant grows back, produces leaves, and flowers minimally or not at all. The gardener decides clematis is unreliable. The plant was not the problem. For USDA zones, most clematis varieties grow well in zones 4 through 9, though some alpina types tolerate zone 3, and evergreen varieties prefer the milder conditions of zone 7 and above. Always check zone compatibility for your specific variety before purchasing. A clematis planted outside its hardiness range will struggle regardless of how well everything else is managed. The practical step at the nursery is simple. Find the label. Identify the pruning group. If the label does not include this information, search the variety name before you buy. That 30-second step prevents years of confusion. But choosing the right variety creates a foundation, and the next secret determines whether that foundation stays healthy long-term.
Secret number 2, the cool roots, sunny tops rule. Experienced clematis growers repeat this principle so consistently that it has become one of gardening's most quoted guidelines. Feet in the shade, head in the sun. Most people who hear it assume it means growing clematis in a partially shaded position. It does not. Clematis flowers best with at least 6 hours of direct sunlight reaching the upper growth and foliage. The sun requirement is genuine and non-negotiable for good bloom production. What the guideline actually refers to is soil temperature in the root zone, and understanding this distinction is what separates a clematis that merely survives from one that thrives for decades. When container soil or bare garden soil around a clematis receives sustained direct summer sun, the root zone heats up significantly. Hot roots under moisture-stressed conditions weaken the plant, reduce flowering, and create vulnerability to disease and pests. This is a slow, quiet stress that does not produce obvious symptoms until performance has already been compromised for an entire season. The solution has two practical components. First, mulch, and mulch generously. Apply a 2 to 3 inch layer of organic material, bark chips, shredded leaves, straw, or well-made compost in a circle around the base of the plant. Keep the mulch several inches away from the stem itself to allow air circulation at the crown. This single practice moderates soil temperature through summer heat and winter cold simultaneously, retains moisture between waterings, and gradually improves soil structure as it breaks down. A clematis with cool, consistently moist roots responds in an immediately visible way. Growth is stronger, flowering is more prolific, and the plant develops the kind of resilience that allows it to survive periods of neglect without significant setback. The second component is companion planting or strategic positioning. Low-growing perennials planted around the base of a clematis serve the same function as mulch while adding visual interest. Hardy geraniums, hostas, and catmint are all commonly used for this purpose. They shade the soil, reduce evaporative water loss, and create the cool root environment clematis prefers, while making the overall planting look intentional and finished. In container settings, positioning the pot so the lower portion sits in partial shade while the upper growth reaches towards sun accomplishes the same goal. Alternatively, placing a second, shorter container directly in front of the clematis pot to shade its lower half is a simple and effective approach. The most common mistake is mulching once at planting and never refreshing it. Organic mulch breaks down over 1 to 2 growing seasons. Annual refreshing in early spring maintains the depth, insulation, and moisture retention that make it effective. This next mistake, though, quietly weakens the entire plant in ways that are harder to see, and it begins underground from the moment of planting. Secret number 3, planting depth and support. There is one rule for planting clematis that has more impact on long-term survival than almost anything else in this video. Plant it deep. Not at the same depth it was growing in the nursery pot, deeper. 2 to 3 inches below the original crown, which is the point where the stem meets the root system. This means the lowest set of leaf nodes goes below the soil surface, not above it. Most gardeners do not do this, and most gardeners who lose clematis to wilt, the fungal condition that causes sudden stem blackening and collapse, would have saved their plant if they had understood this at planting time. Here is why it matters. Clematis wilt can strike a healthy, vigorous plant quickly. It can take a stem from lush and productive to black and collapsed in a matter of days. When this happens to a plant with nodes buried below the soil surface, the plant has a recovery mechanism. New growth can emerge from those buried nodes the following spring. The root system and crown survive. The plant comes back. When it happens to a plant at standard planting depth, there is nothing left below the surface to regenerate from. Deep planting also encourages a more extensive, more robust root system over time. Roots that develop from buried nodes extend outward in multiple directions, creating greater surface area for water and nutrient uptake. This is directly connected to flowering. The more extensive the root system, the more energy the plant can direct into bloom production. Support is the second component of this secret, and it is one that needs to be addressed before the plant needs it, rather than after.
Clematis climbs using its leaf petioles, the small connecting stems between individual leaves and the main vine. Those petioles curl and wrap around whatever they can reach, but they need something narrow enough to grip. A thick wooden post, a flat fence board, or a wide trellis rail gives the plant almost nothing to work with. The correct support has thin, accessible elements. Narrow trellis wires strung horizontally at regular intervals, metal mesh with small openings, hardy bamboo canes, or natural jute twine all provide the graspable structure that allows clematis to climb freely. On solid walls or wooden fences, attaching a mesh panel several inches in front of the surface rather than directly against it provides the airflow that reduces fungal pressure, including the wilt that deep planting helps the plant survive. Most gardeners blame the plant when vertical growth stalls or looks sparse. The real reason is almost always that the support structure doesn't give the plant enough to grip, and the petioles lose contact before they can establish.
Secret number 4. Watering and feeding. Clematis is not a drought-tolerant plant. It is a vigorous grower that produces substantial amounts of foliage, flowering stems, and blooms across a long season, and that level of output requires consistent moisture and appropriate nutrition to sustain. The watering principle is straightforward. Keep the root zone consistently moist during the growing season, particularly during the establishment period in the first year and during flower bud development in subsequent years. Never allow the root zone to dry out completely during these periods. In containers, this may mean checking moisture levels every day or two during summer heat. At the same time, and this is the balance that trips many gardeners, waterlogged soil is equally damaging. Clematis does not want to sit in standing water. Roots deprived of oxygen decline quickly and become vulnerable to the same pathogens that cause wilt and root rot. The practical target is consistent moisture without saturation. In garden beds with well-amended, free-draining soil, this usually means deep watering every 5 to 7 days in summer, less frequently in spring and autumn. In containers, drainage holes that actually drain freely are non-negotiable. Feeding is where many gardeners accidentally produce a plant with beautiful foliage and very few flowers. Excess nitrogen drives leafy vegetative growth. A plant fed with a high nitrogen general fertilizer produces lush dark green stems and leaves and relatively modest flowering. To maximize flowering production, feed with a high potassium formula during the period leading up to and during flowering. The same fertilizers used for tomatoes and fruiting crops work well for this purpose. In early spring, as new growth emerges, a balanced fertilizer supports the initial push. As the plant approaches flowering, switch to a high potassium formula. Slow-release granular fertilizers applied once or twice per season work well in garden beds. Liquid feeding every 2 to 3 weeks during the growing season is more effective for container plants, where nutrients leach through more quickly with regular watering. Compost as a mulch layer serves double duty. It insulates roots while gradually releasing nutrients at the rate the plant can absorb them. An inch of well-made compost added to the top of the mulch layer in spring is one of the simplest feeding strategies available. The signs of underwatering are wilting, leaf scorch at the margins, and bud drop before flowers open. The signs of overwatering are yellowing leaves beginning at the lower part of the plant, soft or blackened stems at the base, and a general decline despite what appears to be adequate care. And this is where many gardeners create beautiful leaves but very few flowers. Which clematis variety is your favorite? Drop it in the comments, because the community watching this has a lot of collective experience, and seeing what others are growing well is genuinely useful.
Secret number 5. Pruning without killing your blooms. This is the secret that explains almost every case of a clematis that stopped flowering. The plant did not stop. The flowers were removed before they could open. Understanding pruning groups is not a technical complexity. It is a single piece of information, which group your plant belongs to, that determines the single most impactful maintenance task in the entire year. Let us go through each group clearly. Group 1 varieties bloom in early spring on old wood from the previous season. These plants need the least intervention of any clematis. After flowering is complete, remove dead or damaged stems, tidy the plant lightly, and leave the productive old wood entirely intact. Hard pruning a Group 1 clematis removes the growth that carries next season's buds. The flowering wood needs to be preserved, not cut away. Group 2 varieties produce their primary display in late spring and early summer, also on old wood. They require a light pruning approach in late winter or very early spring, removing dead and weak stems, reducing the overall length of remaining stems by roughly a third, and tidying the structure. This light pruning maintains the framework of old wood that carries the early flowers, while encouraging fresh growth that supports the later secondary flush. Heavy pruning of a Group 2 plant in early spring eliminates the entire first display. This is the single most common pruning mistake in clematis growing. Group 3 varieties flower in late summer and autumn, entirely on new growth produced in the current season. These are the easiest to prune and the most forgiving of mistakes. Cut them back hard, to 12 to 18 inches from the ground in late winter or early spring. This sounds severe, but because every flower will be produced on growth that has not yet emerged at pruning time, there is nothing to lose and everything to gain from a clean, hard cut. Group 3 plants that are not pruned back become congested, tangled, and progressively less productive over several seasons. Hard annual pruning keeps them vigorous and flowering. The beginner-friendly summary. Find out your clematis's pruning group. Write it down or photograph the label. Then prune according to that group's timing and depth, once per year at the right moment. A clematis that receives correct group-appropriate pruning for 2 or 3 consecutive seasons becomes visibly more productive each year. The root system matures, the flowering wood develops, and the display expands outward and upward in ways that make even experienced gardeners pause to look. A wall of mature clematis in full bloom, layer after layer of color, climbing from ground to roofline, covering an arch or pergola in thousands of flowers, is not a result of exceptional skill. It is the result of consistently avoiding a small number of simple mistakes. Those 5 secrets cover everything that separates a clematis that disappears after one season from one that returns every year with more to show for itself. Choose the right variety and confirm its pruning group before it leaves the nursery. Keep roots cool and moist with generous mulching. Plant 2 to 3 inches deeper than the nursery depth to protect against wilt. Water consistently without waterlogging and feed with a high potassium formula during flowering. And prune according to the group. Lightly for Group 1 and 2, hard for Group 3. Clematis is not a difficult plant. It is a plant that rewards understanding. And once those 5 pieces are in place, a clematis can grow with very little ongoing intervention, producing more flowers each year, climbing higher, returning stronger after winter, and becoming one of the most impressive features in a garden. If this was useful, hit the like button and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next, because the next video breaks down the easiest low-maintenance flowering perennials that practically take care of themselves, and a few of them will surprise you with how much they produce. Until next time, happy gardening, and may your clematis bloom bigger every year.